So it's now my pleasure to invite Professor Jeroen van der Hoven, who's going to talk to us about ethics of AI in healthcare. Professor van der Hoven is University Professor and Professor of Ethics and Technology at Delft University of Technology. He is founding editor of the journal, founding editor and editor-in-chief of Ethics and Information Technology. He's a permanent member of the European Group on Ethics of the Presidents of the European Commission, and has published widely on the ethics of digital technology, particularly design. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, so thank you for that introduction and also for the invitation to speak here. It's a great pleasure. I can only echo what has been said about the organization and the welcoming atmosphere. It's really great, wonderful. In addition to what you've mentioned, I also had the pleasure to work with Effie in the WHO task force on artificial intelligence and the ethics of artificial intelligence and healthcare. And I will address a couple of issues that, I'm a philosopher by training, that have occupied me and kind of kept me busy for the last 20, 30 years. And they were also in the report, but fortunately, Effie, took it upon her to explain what let's say the principles and the meat of the is. And I would like to highlight what the how is that you also mentioned, the methodology. I've been teaching ethics and technology at a technical university for some years, and we think we are onto something with respect to how ethics, applied ethics, needs to change in the 21st century, where everything is designed and engineered around us. We live in perfectly artificial environments, and so how do we kind of shift gears from traditional ethics, applied ethics, whether that is sports ethics or medical ethics or criminal justice ethics or digital ethics. And I hope to be able to provide you with some guidance on how to do that. And if you want to take away one thing, it is think design. It's not design thinking as we know it from the creative industry, but it is think in terms of design. It is an under-theorized notion in philosophy and in ethics, I would say. We have focused on describing the world, on explaining the world, on predicting the world, and we have forgotten about that we also design the world, and that it is something that ethicists or moral philosophers or anyone who is interested in ethical issues has in common with engineers. So they also transform the world, they create something that wasn't there before. So that is the... So I was asked by an online journal, what is the most dangerous technology? And of course, then that's an invite to start to think about quantum or AI or genetic engineering. But it struck me that one of the problems that we have, one of the main problems, is what Susanna Zuboff has called epistemic chaos, and the famous philosopher Obama has called epistemic crises. And that is referring to the fact that we are, as we are here today, I think also thinking about the future of epistemic institutions. Epistemic institutions like universities, like academies, like libraries, like museums, like journalism. They're all geared towards attaining truth, and they're oriented towards the truth. The truth, nothing but the truth, and the full truth. And they are endangered because these big tech players that have been referred to now very often in the previous presentations have other ulterior motives, and it's not a secret, but they are about profit. And that can compromise and undermine the pursuit of truth of those institutions. So without further ado, we know that artificial intelligence is doing a lot for drug discovery, for synthetic biology. It has been, we couldn't be doing what we're doing without artificial intelligence and machine learning. So protein discovery, not only predicting how these they behave, but also coming up and inventing completely new ones. which opens, of course, up a completely new territory that we don't know. Right? So there are issues about safety, existential threats as a result of the new things that we bring about with the help of artificial intelligence and these incredibly powerful tools that have been referred to, these kind of with, let's say, hundreds of billions of parameters that we don't understand. So this is opening, according to Henry Kissinger, even how the Enlightenment ends, or will artificial intelligence destroy humanity? Well, the jury is still out. In any case, life sciences have been there before. They have dealt with these, discussions about existential threats before, whether it's germline research, gene drives, of gain-of-function research. But in any case, the artificial intelligence tools and techniques are now being applied in the health domain, and they're applied everywhere. So they can help us do genetics and power surgical robots and maximize hospital efficiency. And they're part of new innovative endeavors in healthcare, for example, the adoption of remote patient monitoring, popularized and becoming very prominent during COVID, of course, connected, continuous augmented care. We are thinking about these kind of things, autonomous, fully autonomous insulin pumps. I don't have to explain to you that this is a lethal device. And we should be very careful. If this thing makes a mistake, then you're dead, basically. AI is nudging doctors to have conversations with people who, according to the predictive models, will die soon or will be in serious physical trouble. So, talk to this patient. But, are we sure? Targeted dream incubation. For example, just hack someone's brain, and this gave rise to an alarming open letter of leading sleep researchers in the world who have actually said, well, perhaps this is not a good idea, when they found out that commercial companies were trying to use Siri or your devices that are on your bedside table to send signals to hack your brain, basically to make you dream about certain things. Beer, in this case, in the US. That is something that we should think about. The risks are well known. We have just touched upon them, previous speakers. There's poor data quality, issues with the volume of the data, representativeness, the labeling, the annotation, the cleaning, training of the models, testing, validation, proper use, deployment, post-marketing surveillance for artificial intelligence tools and applications, redress, recourse, and contestation, and of course all the errors that we know from working with statistics. Here's an example. You may have seen that little example. Who has seen that example? So machine learning is trained to make the distinction between wolves and huskies. So you give it a lot of examples and you tell them, supervised learning, you tell them this is a husky, this is a wolf. And then it will find out, and it will unfailingly, classify things as wolves or huskies, until they found out that the machine had only been looking at the background. So snow, all the wolves had been photographed in the snow, and all the huskies in the green garden. So it hadn't learned anything about wolves, huskies, but only about snow in the background. So this is for medical imaging. Let's say if you're looking at what are you looking at? And we found this paper analyzes it, and maybe AI may be more prone to errors in image-based diagnosis than clinicians because they are looking at different things. If you filter out the environment, for example, the performance, classifying performance of the model is going down, which is an indication that it has been looking at the background, right? That is, according to the medical specialist, is irrelevant, right? So a couple of those tests that have been referred to, that filtering of looking trying to bludgeon or trying to squeeze out of the system what it has been looking at is very, very interesting. This is also an interesting case where people will just dismissed or discontinued from a pain relief treatment in a hospital because of a predictive system that gives you a score for being at risk of becoming addicted to opioids. So this is narc care. It's being used everywhere, and people can be turned down and be in great trouble. The algorithm looks at the number of pharmacies that you go to, the distance of your home to the pharmacy, the history of your traumatic life events, the payment method, the number of medical specialists, and the number of others. So you can already see that if you're living in a rural area, then this system will discriminate against you. My colleagues at Erasmus Medical Center have looked in this paper, it's a BMJ paper, at the level of maturity of AI. So it's very similar to what Effie showed. Previous speakers have referred to. All of the work is here. So that is model prototyping, model development, clinical outcome, and really use at the bedside. That is very rare to find. But of course, it will come. You know, so from bites to bedside is now what needs to happen, and people are working on it. And of course, given the fact that there are these problems in the background, we better, you know, think about these things. So you see, this is Effie has already kind of gone into this, but I would like to draw attention to the design thing that we worked on. So all of these problems are well known. But it's endorsing, the WHO report is endorsing, I think, what we need to be aware of. So it's an approach to AI ethics that is gaining ground. It's been endorsed by the IEEE, and Paul Nemitz is the senior legal advisor of the European Council. In this paper has said, in order to protect and strengthen Western liberal democracies in the age of AI, and human rights, rule of law, democracy, we need a new culture of technology and business development, which we call human rights, rule of law, and democracy by design. So that is what we need to do. It's not just a matter of listing principles, publishing manifestos. It is the how we make the next move, how we make sure that we actually get somewhere and that the world is shaping up in accordance to our ideals. So this is also part of the philosophy of the European Commission. So the AI Act that was also referred to has this as a core idea. These principles need to somehow be designed for in a transparent and systematic way. It's not just a one-off or so an experiment. We need to make sure that our organizations, our protocols, everything that we set up supports that kind of process of designing for our principles so that we can demonstrate and show to everyone who is interested and affected what we have done and how we have arrived at a particular technology or a particular application, a particular model or a particular tool. So we need to innovate responsibly with AI for health, and that taps into 10 years of research by the European Commission on responsible research and innovation. The acronym is RRI. So all our applied research needs to be, let's say, geared towards the big challenges. That's the Lund Declaration. The Rome Declaration says, and quite some money has been spent on it, a large portion of this 80 billion of that large research framework needs to be geared towards big problems. And we have to find and demonstrate that we have really come up with good solutions to those big problems. So big companies are now working on that. Responsible innovation and AI, Google, Microsoft, responsible innovation, even Meta, right? Responsible innovation principles. And the idea is identify serious problems to solve, think in advance about consequences and alternatives regarding proposed solutions, nothing else than we've done in medical ethics or in other branches of ethics thus far. Evaluate solutions and alternatives explicitly in terms of relevant moral values with the help of a broad range of stakeholders, because you cannot dream up the truth by yourself, and use the resulting moral considerations as requirements for design. This is the new element. So it's not just a discursive exercise, analytical, could be of high quality, but it has to be turned and translated into requirements so that your engineers can work with them and they can be tested. You know, why has this particular features? Well, I can explain that in light of the process I've gone through. We also need to be aware, I'll come back to that in the end, we also need to design for the conditions of responsibility. We cannot expect that our very complex, long-lasting endeavors involving many, many people from different fields and disciplines will automatically result in a situation where people can be fairly held responsible. That is something that needs to be designed for as well. So that is the WHO that you can find in that report. So for AI to have a beneficial impact on public health and medicine, ethical considerations and human rights must be placed at the center of the design, development and deployment of AI technologies for health. So these are the consensus principles that we arrived at. It was great to see that that worked with people from such different backgrounds from all over the world. So that is, I think, quite an achievement. AI systems should be designed demonstrably and systematically to conform to the principles of human rights with which they cohere. More specifically, they should be designed to assist humans, whether they may be medical providers or patients, in making informed decisions. Don't expect that it will happen automatically if you haven't designed for it explicitly. Design for values is explicit transposition of moral and social values into context-dependent design requirements, a roadmap for stakeholders to translate human rights into context-dependent design requirements through a structured, inclusive, transparent process, such that abstract values are translated into design requirements and norms, that is, properties of technologies that should have to ensure certain values. So this talks about involvement of stakeholders, and that it applies to socio-technical design, not only to the database, to the model, to the algorithm, which is the core of the technology, but it's a much broader unit of analysis, in this case, a broader unit of design. I will come back to that later. So a little bit more about this. This is applied philosophy, if you want. Our thinking about design and moral values is that, first of all, and that's an open door, it's trivial, designs are not value neutral. We know the literature of the biases, right? So that racial biases, etc. So I don't have to go into that. This is a simple solution. If you don't want to chase people away from benches because you don't like them to sleep on it, whether it's, irrespective of whether you agree with that or not, that's a way to do that. You can just design your ideas in. There are racist overpasses that prevent buses to be routed from poor black neighborhoods to the white middle class beaches. So you can design your racist idea intentionally or unintentionally into technology that from there on downstream will affect what people can do, right? So designs are not value neutral. And on the other hand, if you have a value, a moral value, in the 21st century where everything is designed from A to Z, you expect people to be interested in what they imply, what those values imply for your design. So if you're a director of a hospital, and you have been talking the last 10 years about privacy, and when you're thinking about a new system, hospital information system, and you don't mention privacy at all, then we conclude that you have not been really serious about privacy. So if you have a value in the 21st century where everything is designed, you should be interested in what it implies for how you shape the world around you. So that is design consequential. And there are groups in the world, especially Batya Friedman in Seattle, Helen Nissenbaum, Cornell, we in Delft, IEEE. There are more groups working on this particular approach to doing ethics. So it's we did a book with Cambridge on Cambridge University Press on designing and ethics. So it's a design turn in applied ethics, you could say. Information systems are shaped by hundreds of thousands, millions decisions that have been made. The system that you're working with is the consolidated set of choices that have been made. And some of them are trivial and some of them are really important and will affect what you can do and what you cannot do. So at all of these levels, we should be critical. We should be thinking which choices have been made, what goes into the system, how will that work out, to the best of our ability, of course. So this is the key problem of value-sensitive design. We want the things that we make in a digital space, but also in a civil engineering space, everywhere. These are examples, things that are designed. We want them to be in accordance with our values. We want to express and implement our values into the things that we make. And once we have done so, we want to be able to justify and audit that we've done the right thing, that we have implemented the right values correctly, right? So, and this is not something, a one-shot thing. This is something that we should be able to do on a day-to-day basis, daily. This is iterative and this is agile, as they say. don't buy this book. We're working on an open access version of it. So it's designing for X. So it's designing for privacy. It's 500 pages with examples of how to do that, the methodology to do that. And basically what we're doing, and it's not only in Delft, but in technical universities across Europe, we're thinking in terms of non-functional requirements for the people who have a technical background, non-functional requirements, social, ethical, or legal requirements, and we break them down, we specify them until we hit a layer of specificity that technical people would recognize as requirements, right? So that they can actually code for. And if we ask them, why have you made this decision on your database or the way you have, this algorithm, or then they would be able to go back and say, well, yesterday we said that these norms and policies as a specification of our values, our starting points, would make sense. So you get a tractable ethical debate in the context of the technology that you're developing. So for example, so we call these value hierarchies. If you talk about privacy, you say, well, what do you mean privacy? Well, risk mitigation, accountability, data quality, security. What do you mean risk mitigation? Well, coarse graining your data, data minimization, pseudonymization, whatever. So you get a tractable debate about what you're up to, what you want to achieve, and a disagreement where it's most useful. Right? So this is the picture. I think that is, and the groups that I refer to are more or less on the same page. Also, the European Commission thinks that this is the way forward, and we need to, because we cannot leave it on this level. If you think about algorithmic fairness, everyone agrees that algorithmic fairness should be achieved. Then this colleague found over 20 definitions of algorithmic fairness. So you have to make up your mind. What definition do you choose, in which conditions, and why? So is fairness for you demographic parity or just statistical parity, or is it equalized odds? And you can go on and on and on. So you have to make up your mind. You first have to do a confusion matrix and then decide what you want to do and implement that and check for that and validate your models for that. So this is what is needed, is a move from conceptual engineering. What type of fairness, what conception of fairness do you choose? And then translate that into requirements and then design for it and have experiences and ask people whether they're satisfied with this product or with this service. Does it work? Critically assess it, and then go back to your starting points. So this is also what we see in the literature. We did a centrometric analysis of digital ethics. So digital ethics started 20 years ago. When you Google or just search the term digital ethics, it started, this is a time lapse, basically, a time series. So the most recent publications are here. So this is computer science. This is very technical computer science. This is medical. So the debates about digital ethics started with debates about privacy and patient data. So this is where it started, and then migrated here. The most recent activity when you look for digital ethics is now hardcore computer science journals. So fairness, Google fairness and data, and you will end up in a security journal or something like that. So it is not only, I already said that, it's not only about the algorithms, the model and the data, it's also about the institutional design. So people think, for example, when we discuss these things, nuclear power plants, they think about, oh, how thick are the walls? What's the temperature of the cooling liquid when they want to see whether it's safe or not. But when you think about it, the training of the security guards, the integrity of the supply chains, the calibration of the Geiger counter are equally important to guarantee the security of that and the safety of that system. So this is what we're looking at. We're looking always at systems that are used by people that try to follow rules and that have certain incentives and motivations, etc. So you're designing the whole kit and caboodle: people, hardware, infrastructure, architecture, software, models, data, etc., algorithms, etc. That's the unit of analysis. So a couple of examples of this institutional design is something I took part in of the Royal Dutch Academy of Arts and Sciences. a proposal to come up with review boards for computer science. It was mentioned. We don't have that, right? So we need to think about those. Computer science departments also need to do what medical researchers have been doing in the last 20 years. So that is a kind of detailed design, institutional design for how that should be set up. This is Sheila Jazanov's initiative to set up a global observatory for genome editing. You could also think about setting up an observatory to look at AI applications in healthcare, for example. But it comes with a detailed analysis and design of how to do that. This is a recent publication here in November. So it's Kevin Esveld who said, in order to deal with these issues of biosecurity, bioterrorism, these are real. We really urgently need to address them. He came up with 2 suggestions. These are design suggestions. DNA synthesizing equipment ought to scan for potential threats. So you cannot produce machinery that is used if it doesn't automatically scan for it. And it is probably a lot of work that needs to be done there, but it's a suggestion that he makes and he should know. And untargeted sequencing of sewage at airports, scanning for exponential growth of microorganisms. So that is another way. So these are very practical. Another example, which I find fascinating, is also from the World Health Organization. During COVID, we found out that, unfortunately, there's a lot of violence against women and children behind the closed doors. So what can we do? Coercive control. People are trying to stalk and manipulate their partners, and they use smart technology more and more for that. So smart doorbells, calendars, all kinds of things you don't want to know. Even children's toys and games. But IBM, actually, I don't know whether the colleague's still here, but IBM took it upon themselves to say, well, we can design against that. And they launched an initiative that's called Coercive Control Resistant Design. So it's one thing to protest and to say, well, this is bad, it's unfortunate. Then you have to translate that into, okay, what actually do we want to change? What kind of features does your iPhone need to have in order to counteract these attempts? So they actually do a quite detailed work so that they can come up with design solutions to gaslighting, for example. So these are the rules that they come up with, and these all point to certain features. So that's the problem is, and I have 4 minutes for that, there are so many values, right? And this is talking to the people who have also referred to innovation and the tragic choices that we have to make between confidentiality and privacy and transparency and openness. And on the other hand, there is this condition of value pluralism, and there are conflicts and dilemmas, and we're always confronted with tragic choices. So, and we cannot say, well, today we do human dignity and tomorrow we do democracy, or today we do safety and tomorrow we do something else. So we have to do all of these things at the same time. So we are morally overloaded. We've written a paper on this moral overload. You have to do all of these things at the same time, preferably. So prosperity and sustainability, etc. So these are 2 examples from a non-digital field. From my university, people have been working on 3D printed prosthetic devices with special materials, and they're printed in a particular way so that they get 3 properties. So blood vessels are encouraged to grow around the site of the surgical intervention. Bone tissue regenerates more quickly as a result of that, and it kills bacteria at the site of the surgical intervention. And these people are looking at the statistics of people having complications and dying as a result of the operation, etc., and they want to bring them down. So they're looking for, can we do this? Can we also have this and also have that? Can we satisfy these obligations and can we satisfy these obligations? Here, the same thing, minimal invasive surgery, flexibility. They have worked hard on this, and then they found out that this is very difficult to sterilize. So they also had to design that in. So you see what the structure is of the problem. You want to fit in and accommodate as many of your moral values as you can in your innovation, in your new design. Actually, there is a philosopher who has, I think, formulated the axiom or the principle that is underlying this idea. This is Ruth Barkin Marcus. And she said, if there is an obligation to do both A and B, to serve both sustainability and safety, privacy and accountability, then we have a second order obligation to see to it that we can do both A and B. Right? So we have to change the world in such a way that we can realize those things. If I can save your life, but unfortunately not your life because I'm too far away from you, I have to think of something clever so that I can do both. There's no guarantee that I can, hence the second order. That's a weaker obligation, but if the stakes are high enough, I should be trying and trying hard. So this is the axiom of moral responsibility, of responsible innovation. If you can change the world by innovation today so that you can satisfy more of your obligations tomorrow, you have a moral obligation to innovate today, you see. And so this is the pattern. Try to sneak as many values into your list, initial list that you're designing for, and your innovation is the smart idea that will allow you to do more good than before. Note that this turns innovation into a moral category, right? Because now what you have achieved is you have expanded the set of moral obligations that you can satisfy, and the difference is only your smart idea. So, and of course we see this in privacy by design. This is exactly what privacy by design claims to do. So you want to count the number of people in this room, but you don't want to disclose their identities. You can coarse grain the data. This is a technique familiar to all of us and to computer scientists. And there are very sophisticated techniques of differential privacy or synthetic data or homomorphic encryption on privacy preserving machine learning or k-anonymity. All of these tools came out of the idea we need to reconcile both the functionality that IT and computers can bring and all the values that we think are very important. And we see the same pattern, I think, in explainable AI that was discussed. The power of deep learning and machine learning can bring us a lot, but we need to reconcile it and combine it with explainability. There are some fundamental problems, and that's my last thing. I can't go into the details of that. Some fundamental problems that are not amenable directly to these design approaches. One is, and it has been touched upon, is what Michael Walzer, forgotten, but I think undeservedly so, in his book Spheres of Justice has highlighted that in a decent society, I would say, the market and healthcare and all of these different social spheres are separated, and we guard and these boundaries between those spheres. So in healthcare there is something else that is important, and we have different rules to distribute what is scarce and what is important in healthcare from the market. You know, if you do well, you work hard and you're creative, you make a lot of money. So that's okay. But it doesn't mean that if you're rich, you can convert your advantages that you have achieved in the market sphere into the healthcare domain. Or if you have a seat in parliament, that you can get a university degree, or if you have a university degree that translates into admission to a university. So that needs to be separate. He says we practice the art of separation between those spheres, and that is under threat because big tech is moving into every sector of society. So, and the only driver is profit, unfortunately. It's quarterly revenues, so that must be the case. So that is a problem for all the values and the things that are central to those autonomous social spheres. I think another thing that we should be worried about is this crowdsourcing, not only in healthcare ethics, but everywhere. So you have the moral machine of MIT. So you can play trolley problems, right? So you can, the trolley, the train, how do you choose? You have 50,000 varieties of these games, and you have millions and millions of people have played the trolley problem. Now, if you're a software engineer or your company and you need to make those decisions, which database do you go to? Well, probably you're going to have a look at how millions and millions of people have played and which choices they have made in trolley problems. But that is, of course, we know that millions and millions of people can go wrong when it comes to ethics. I have to close down. So big data and AI, it has also been, I think, mentioned or referred to by David Haid in his introduction. There are some things to do with issues to do with respect for persons and human dignity. It's so overwhelming, the combination of big data and advanced machine learning. We can learn so much about people when you combine it with their genomes and exposomes and whatever you have. You put it all together, then you forget that there is a subjective perspective of the subject, of the individual, of the human being that also needs to be taken into account. So, and then there is a problem, and that's really my final line, an epistemic enslavement, because it's an overwhelming epistemic technology that comes with so much expertise of the best experts around in the world. Who is the individual doctor, the individual user to overrule that or to disagree with that? So once you have really started to use it, it's very difficult to opt out. And that's a kind of a practical enslavement. I think you cannot just take the risk in situ when you're using the system or consulting the system, cannot take the risk of non-complying with the system because it's a risk that you cannot justify. You're not in an epistemic position to overrule the system. You have no arguments, you have no reasons. Right? So that is, I think, yeah, I would close down. So this is the situation that we're in. Embedded in these contexts, limited freedom of belief acquisition, epistemically dependent on this environment, and that is a kind of an epistemic enslavement. Final, so that's final. I want to close off with this. And it says that it's not so much the problem that computers, it's a German text by Joe Weizenbaum, that computers will be thinking more like us, but it's the problem probably is that we be more and more thinking like machines. So that I think is a problem. Thank you very much. I've taken a little bit more of your time.